Hello, everyone. We are very pleased to welcome all of you to this webinar, which is on people-centered justice and access to justice, and addressed to such a large and international audience. My name is Mariam Gobroinze. I am a community engagement specialist at USAID Rule of Law program in Georgia, and I will be the moderator at this event. First of all, I would like to thank the International Association for Court Administration, East-West Management Institute, and USAID for their support in organizing this event. And also, as a Georgian, I would like to add that these are very challenging days for our country. Thousands of people are in streets to advocate for the country's European aspirations and democratic processes in Georgia. Unfortunately, many peaceful protesters, including our friends, family members, and colleagues, are persecuted, detained, and they experience some kind of violence. So special thanks to everyone from Georgia who are attending this webinar in such challenging conditions. So now I would like to introduce and give the floor to the people who helped us to organize this event. And firstly, I would like to give floor to Amala Harris, who is the president of International Association for Court Administration, as mentioned before. Thanks again.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our session today. As Miriam said, I'm the president of the International Association for Court Administration, IACA, as we call it, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. In an increasingly interdependent world, courts of all nations and jurisdictions are facing similar challenges in providing fair, effective, and timely justice for those we serve, especially with limited resources, among many other issues with which courts are faced. These challenges bind together our IACA membership and others like you here today, irrespective of underlying legal systems and cultural heritage. As judicial system development is occurring all over the world and reoccurring in some areas, best practices are emerging, and court staff and judges from around the world are addressing and sharing common problems, experiences, and approaches to resolutions. One of IACA's core responsibilities is to promote professional court management and the rule of law. In order to carry that out efficiently, we partner with organizations. We sponsor international conferences, forums, and educational programs, such as this webinar today, partnering with East-West Management Institute and USAID, addressing highly important topics which all of our courts are faced with on a daily, ongoing basis. I'd like to thank you for joining us for this engaging session, and we hope that you leave here today inspired with new knowledge from our valued and experienced presenters. And most importantly, thank you for caring enough to be present here with all of us for this informative session. We will now move to Mark Dietrich, Vice President of East-West Management Institute. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela, and thank you to IACA for organizing and hosting this webinar. And thank you to everyone around the world who is tuning in this afternoon, this evening, this morning, whatever it may be. Welcome and greetings to you from the East-West Management Institute. Just want to also thank those of the East-West Management Institute staff who have been working so hard to put this program together from 3 different countries where we're working on people-centered justice programming. And I'm looking forward to learning more about the comparative and different approaches that we're taking to PCJ in 3 countries that have some similar backgrounds, but some very different backgrounds. And the projects are all quite different and taking different approaches to PCJ. So I think it'll be educational for all of us and interesting for all of us. I do want to give a special shout out to Mariam and Tim for really doing a lot of work to pull this together. And against the backdrop of doing that in what is currently happening in Georgia is really very impressive. And our hearts go out to the people of Georgia, where we, the East West Management Institute, have been working for 14 years to promote democracy, rule of law, and reform, and to build a more people-centric government, a responsive government. And so we're looking on and following the events in Georgia with a great deal of concern and some hope as well. Finally, I would be remiss if I did not express gratitude to our donor, United States Agency for International Development, which is funding the 3 projects that you'll be hearing about later today, and in particular to Andrew Solomon, who has been a stalwart supporter of rule of law within USAID, and one of the primary authors of the new USAID strategy still relatively new strategy document on the rule of law for USAID that centers on people-centered justice. And Andrew, thank you for your support, and a special shout out to Andrew for joining us since he just got off a plane. But I think we'd be hard pressed to find a time when Andrew has not just stepped off a plane. So thank you all. And Andrew, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mark. And also thanks, Pamela, Mariam, and Tim for your leadership in convening us today. I'm really pleased to join in this conversation and to collaborate on behalf of USAID with IACA and East West Management, UMI, and also the Center for Justice Innovation that's here with us. You are longstanding partners and friends of USAID in the work that we do, promoting the rule of law around the world. And I believe we have a lot to learn from each other in our respective roles and functions. And I'm also very pleased by our focus today on people-centered justice. As Mark mentioned, USAID's still relatively new rule of law policy, which we adopted in March 2023, puts a premium on what I like to call doing rule of law better by doing it differently. And one way that USAID is doing that with our partners and in a growing number of countries, including those we're going to be highlighting today, is by integrating a people-centered justice approach into our rule of law programs, an approach that puts people, their legal problems and priorities, and the experiences of justice seekers at the center of efforts to improve justice systems and services by making them more data-driven, more user-friendly, and more problem-solving. And as we do this, as USAID is investing in people-centered justice, we're also investing in the learning, in part through our new Rule of Law Ideas Lab. And we're also relearning, in some instances, a few things. I want to highlight several of those. It's not an exhaustive list by any means. But first, it's the importance of not only building the capacity of justice institutions and actors to collect quality data, but it's also the capacity to manage it, to use it, to share it, to effectively drive evidence-based decision-making. Balancing investments in innovation with traditional approaches and local capacity building is also key in order to ensure success and sustainability of what we're trying to do. We also have to do better in scaling solutions and good practices, not only to solve people's legal problems, but to prevent them as well. Partnerships. Partnerships matter within the justice sector and across sectors, including health, education, labor, to more comprehensively address people's legal problems and their related implications. It's also very important and very challenging, as is measuring impact making the business case, demonstrating the value proposition of people-centered approaches in order to gain the buy-in from stakeholders. That's essential, as is in understanding for us the political economy around the shift to people-centered justice and navigating the vested interests and the behaviors that can block meaningful reform and resist innovation in this space. It's critical. The country programs that are being discussed today form what we at USAID refer to as our first wave of rule of law programming that takes a people-centered justice approach. I want to thank UMI and all the people that are involved in these programs for the work that you're doing with us to really shift the paradigm. And I look forward to learning more about your work. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, Pamela. Thank you, Mark, for your introductions. Now, I would like to present to you Tim Bunevets, who is USAID Rule of Law Programs advisor, and he will be presenting today about Georgian experience. Tim, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mariam. Just want to make sure that everyone can see the presentation. Thank you once again, Mariam. A huge thank you to you, actually, Mariam, because as you just mentioned yourself, things are happening on the streets, and many of our staff here at the East-West Management Institute are often, away attending various meetings, protests, and so on. So it's really not easy to come here and talk about our work, which has been going on for a long time, but in a different context just before the recent events. Also, huge thank you to Pam, Mark, and Andrew. You have really assisted us and supported this initiative, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you and to our audiences in our sister programs in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan what we have done or what we have been doing in Georgia. So let me give you a short presentation, just very briefly about me. I'm an international rule of law advisor at UMI, but I also have a second role here as a president-elect of IACA. So I'm kind of sitting here with two hats. I was previously an advisor to the Attorney General in Australia. I've worked with the courts. I was an academic, and at the moment I work with the East-West Management Institute on the 5-year rule of law program here. So let me talk to you about today's session very briefly. I have the following session outlined for you. I will talk about what people-centered justice is. There are so many different definitions out there, so I had to, rather than look out for an encyclopedia, I wanted to give you a definition that has come through my work, both as a lawyer and as an academic, as a policy officer, and now as a rule of law advisor. So I will share one possible definition of people-centered justice with you. Then I will provide a specific emphasis on engaging or building a capacity to engage with and serve the community as being the driving force behind everything that we do. And this serving the community, the idea of service to the community, serving the individuals and other members of their community is at the very forefront of people-centered justice. Finally, I will talk about some interesting strategies, or the main strategies, I should say, for mainstreaming people-centered justice at the Georgian Rule of Law program. But let's start with the idea of justice. I often use this slide because I think it kind of encapsulates the traditional view of what justice is. And as you can see, it's full of lawyers. It looks like a 19th century courtroom with people wearing wigs. And often, if you think about it, it is a lawyer's world, because where is our court user? Where is our justice seeker? He or she is often somewhere on the sidelines, looking at the process and wondering, somewhat fearfully, whether they're going to get out of this process unhurt. really our justice seeker here in this kind of a courtroom is more of an observer rather than a participant. So this is where I wanted to start thinking or introduce you to the idea of people-centered justice. It's about these institutions, including courts, including legal services, including government departments, and even other organizations, universities, and so on, to start changing their practices in order to tailor their offerings, tailor their premises, procedures, laws, services, relationships, and activities to the needs of justice seekers and their communities. How can we do it? Well, let's think about the so-called therapeutic jurisprudence courtroom. Here, this is what we've done. This is what we had done in Australia and in many other countries in the world. This is a different type of courtroom. You see, this jurisdiction, the courts in this jurisdiction, the judges have recognized that they need to make some changes to tailor the premises, the procedures and activities to different court seekers. Here you can't see who the judge is or even who is the justice seeker. Perhaps the bald guy with the tie, but I'm also a bald guy with a tie and I'm not a judge, so you can't really tell, can you? Here we have a completely different setup, different services, perhaps some non-lawyers involved to assist a particular type of justice seeker. In this case, it's a mental health court, so you can see the person who has a mental impairment is actually a participant in this process, and they can actually get various different types of services from the court. So the court is no longer being used here just to deliver justice, but actually to provide some therapeutic outcomes to improve the health and well-being of these particular individuals. And this is a really important issue that I'm going to continue talking about throughout my presentation. Courts and the justice system not being there simply to deliver justice, but also to serve the community. However, much of what we call the justice system happens outside of the courts, and really all of us have to start thinking about our interactions with the court users, with the justice seekers, with the communities. For example, at every touch point between the court user and the justice system, we need to really start thinking how best to approach our specific justice seeker. Here it's perhaps in this photograph you can see perhaps at the entrance to a courthouse there's too heavy of an emphasis on police, on security, on these guard dogs. This might actually hurt or frighten some people entering the courthouse. But let me show you what other principles we have developed here in Georgia at the Rule of Law program for mainstreaming the PCJ or people-centered justice throughout the country. Firstly, promoting better cross-institutional engagement within the justice sector. And when I say cross-institutional engagement, I'm referring here to a broader notion of who the justice sector is, including the courts, including the lawyers, including the legal aid service, the universities, the public defenders' offices, and so on and so forth. So it's a much broader conception of what is the justice system. Secondly, as Andrew really mentioned it, building the capacity to measure and meet community needs and attitudes. We cannot be people-centered or people-oriented unless we are able to capture what is it that the people need or what they require. So we need to actually create this capacity within those institutions to measure and meet community needs. Once we have done that, we can start thinking about the process of what we call PCJ thinking. So embedding people-centered justice thinking becomes our next step on the road to very good people-centered justice. So indeed, this includes people-centered justice within the courts, the legal fraternity, the universities, and non-governmental organizations, legal aid service, and others. Finally, once we have done the measurements, the thinking, we need to start introducing the people-centered justice activities. So here we have made a huge effort to actually engage with the community and also educate the community about justice and legal issues and to provide implementation. Let me just give you a few examples of each of these four principles that I've just spoken about. Firstly, promoting better cross-institutional understanding and engagement. Here you can see we ran a lot of activities that involve different different institutional players. For example, on the left-hand side, you might see the judges. On the right-hand side, you will see the mediators, a traditional institution, traditional judges meeting with mediators to expand court-annexed mediation. This is cross-institutional sharing. Also, we've supported the Ombudsman's Office and non-governmental organizations to pursue strategic litigation. This has turned out to be an excellent tool for promoting people-centered justice. One of the results has been the outcome has been 45 new important legal precedents that have been delivered by the courts in areas of domestic violence, children's rights, employment rights, freedom of expression, and so on. Other examples that I wanted to mention just briefly in this area is we've run several annual court management seminars, and these seminars brought together court staff, court managers, researchers, judges, lawyers, policy think tanks, international experts, and others. And these seminars, as again, they serve exactly to promote this idea of cross-institutional engagement and focusing on issues that all of them have previously identified as needing improvement, including court governance, measuring workloads, people-centered justice, quality of justice, jury management, and many, many others. We've placed a huge emphasis in this cross-institutional engagement on the work between universities and courts. For example, we've established legal clinics at several Georgian universities that work with the courts. One clinic trained students to monitor domestic violence cases, and actually judges from one of the courts were involved in the setting up of this clinic and advising on issues. Another clinic studied the difference between judicial impartiality that is perceived by litigants and compared that with observations by neutral observers. This was a very interesting study because students who observed judges from afar as neutral observers, they focused mainly on judges' knowledge of the law, knowledge of the rules, use of the correct legal precedents, legal procedure, and so on. Whereas the litigants themselves had a completely different view of the judge's impartiality. They were focusing on other issues, on judges' active listening skills, on judges' reputation, whether the judges allowed the parties to fully express themselves, whether they treated them appropriately, whether they ensured clear comprehension, whether they spoke in plain language. So it was really interesting to see that from the litigants, from the court users' perspective, what was more important was this idea of procedural justice, people-centered justice indeed. Second item that I briefly mentioned is the idea that we should equip institutions to measure and meet a range of community needs. We've done this through several means. One of them was to actually run a day-long or 2-day-long workshops with judges and the courts, and inviting judges and court staff to sit together and brainstorm on the issues that they have experienced through their normal everyday work, which are basically the legal needs of their specific communities. And then we asked them to create and we assisted them in drafting their plans, community engagement plans that would address those particular needs. I'll talk about that in a moment, but we also asked our able colleagues from the Center for Justice Innovation to assist us in running some webinars on this issue of measuring community needs and providing procedural justice to court users. We also invited, you can see him there down the bottom, Justice Calabresi from the Red Hook Center in New York. It's a community justice center to actually talk to our judges, to talk to our court staff and explain that courts are not there just to dispense justice, but actually to fulfill other broader functions of actually assisting the community, serving the community, and also, for example, therapeutic jurisprudence courts, as I mentioned earlier, can be used to improve people's lives, their employment prospects, health, and so on and so forth. So we've done all of these activities. We actually run some webinars on measuring users' experiences, enabling courts and court staff to draft their own questionnaires if they wish to do so, and these were quite effective. The third principle that I wanted to mention to all of you is this idea that we are striving to build a capacity to promote people-centered justice thinking within traditional institutions. In other words, thinking outside of the box, thinking, changing our processes, building our internal work culture in such a way that it will develop into a people-centered justice culture. This works not just with the courts. We've done a lot of work with universities. We have run workshops with university professors. We've introduced or supported the introduction of innovative course offerings in Georgia. For example, we've introduced street law programs in various universities, which allow law students to assist people in need of legal advice in certain areas. And this has been done in a systematic way. We brought some experts from the UK to assist us in doing this. We've also run innovative justice schools for university students, where they've been introduced to cutting edge issues and developments in these areas. For example, the interaction of AI and core technology, people-centered justice, mediation, arbitration, and so on and so forth. Finally, we're asking these traditional institutions to change the ways of doing things. For example, at universities, we have promoted new ways of teaching, the so-called flipped classroom model. I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but it's a completely different way of teaching students, rather than simply doing the spoon feeding as is traditionally done in many countries. Similarly, with the courts, with the justice institutions, we've assisted courts to develop community engagement plans. Here you can see judges and court staff working together. There's been a very, very effective way of the courts coming up with new ways of working with the communities. They came up with plans which include many PCJ, people-centered justice activities, surveys and focus group, mock trials, organizing a one day in the court type of activity, plans to run community events and art exhibitions at courthouses, even perhaps providing some social spaces. I mean, these are all plans at the moment, but certainly the court staff have started thinking along those lines. Here on the left-hand side, you can see a legal aid service mobile app that we assisted the Legal Aid Service of Georgia to develop, and that has been used especially in remote areas for people to receive some legal advice directly from LAS using the app. And finally, I wanted to mention, although you have already seen that we are promoting new ways of working with the communities and educating them about the justice and legal issues, it really does require innovation and outreach. You can see on this photo on the left, legal professionals taking off their ties and suits and going out to the communities in far-flung areas of rural Georgia, discussing topical issues with local communities. We've also done similar activities with youth. Here you can see that we've assisted in the promotion of creation of justice board games. You can see it's a new way or an innovative way of educating young people about the importance of rule of law, about justice, about the operation of the courts and the justice system. And we've done that in order to basically make a medium that these young people would be interested in learning through. And we've done other things that I've just mentioned, a couple of other interesting initiatives. For example, we have provided a platform for judges, professors, journalists, and other distinguished members of the community to broadcast their ideas and to discuss topical issues for the community. For example, here you have a former judge and a professor talking about gender fairness in courts, and this was on YouTube. Also, we've supported other initiatives such as the creation of a domestic violence quiz that would allow someone to help a friend who may be in need of assistance because of potential domestic violence. And for example, this could involve informational blackmail, threats by a partner, and so on and so forth. And this initiative, for example, has been seen used by more than 25,000 people here in Georgia who have filled this quiz to date. So in summary, you can see we have used a number of principles here in Georgia to improve people-centered justice. And that is because people-centered justice approach ultimately builds trust. It builds trust between the justice system, the lawyers, the community, and every user interaction between themselves and the justice system can enhance trust using the people-centered justice approach. Conversely, without a people-centered justice approach, there may be less confidence by people in the legal system. So these are the learnings from Georgia, and I'm looking forward to hearing from my colleagues from Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for your amazing presentation. Now we would like to give the floor to Nazira Ramzanova. Nazira is our colleague. She is an experienced legal professional specializing in gender equality, social justice, and human rights protection. She serves as the People-Centered Justice Officer for the USAID Hukuk Bulagi project implemented by the EWMI in Kyrgyzstan. Nazira, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mariam. And first of all, I'm so happy to be a part of this webinar, actually. And greetings from Kyrgyzstan. If you let me, I will start. First of all, my name is Nazira, and actually, I am pleased to present on behalf of the USAID Hukuk Bulagi project implemented by East-West Management Institute in the Kyrgyz Republic. And I would like to share especially about our experience, what kind of challenge we faced when we started in advancing people-centered justice in the Kyrgyzstan, and at the same time, maybe some outcome and some achievements probably we can share with other partners as well. If you let me, I will share with my screen. Just a minute. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yes.
but please click a slideshow and it will be better. Thank you.
Now it's okay. Thank you.
Now it's perfect. Yeah, thanks.
This one. So first of all, within this presentation, I would like just to share about advancing people-centered justice in the Kyrgyz Republic. So first of all, our project, the USAID Hukuk Bulagi project, actually the main vision, it's just to support increasing transparency within the justice system and user-friendly and efficient delivery to responsive legal services. And this is a 5 years project. This project was launched in 2021, and we will going to implement this project until 2026 July. So, as I mentioned, our main goals, it's increasing access to people-centered justice, strengthening institution for transparency and accountability, and promoting gender inclusiveness, inclusive and responsive justice. In terms of project coverage, when we launched, actually, we started from the 3 rayons. It's Nokat rayon of Osh region, then Tong rayon of Issyk-Kul region, and then Sverdlovsky rayon of Bishkek city. But within the 4th year, we extended our coverage, and we include new pilot cities like Karakol city and Jalabad city, because over there we have a house of justice, and in terms of infrastructure, it will be ideally to implement a lot of instruments, some tools on PCJ approach. So what kind of key challenge in access to justice, especially in Kyrgyzstan? You can see from this slide that where we are now. As you know, in an area we have such kind of issue that justice, unfortunately, not for all, but justice for the chosen ones. Sometimes relationship or money can decide a lot of things. But where we should strive for? We should strive for that justice should be for all. And in terms of inaccessible institution of justice, this is also a challenge for us. And we also, where we should to strive for, we should to removing such kind of barrier to access to justice. And the last one, it's insensitivity to people and communities, but where we should strive for in this way, we have to preventing people's legal problem and addressing the justice needs. So our Kyrgyzstan experience on project approach, if before this time that mostly developing program on rule of law and access to justice, focused on the justice system, which include like improvement of infrastructure, digitalization, reform, or legislation, or maybe they mostly pay attention for the legal service providers like a prosecutor, attorney, lawyer, or judge. They just to improve it quality of the service. But especially Kyrgyzstan experience on this way, we started to think about society, to think about communities, because first of all, we have to identify their needs and then only to start to work with the justice system and legal services as well. Because as you know, currently we have a lot of issues in terms of this one. For example, especially on the social barriers, I can say that it's mostly related with the low legal literacy, mistrust in formal institutions, and other issues. So the next one, in order to start to identify justice needs, we conducted Hukuk Blago project applies a PCG approach, and we started to base on data-driven through justice needs survey. This was initiated by the president of administration of the Kyrgyz Republic, and the survey was conducted 2022 in 3 pilot rayons, as I mentioned, in Tong Rayon, in Sverdlovsky Rayon, and in Nokat Rayon. The sample units, actually, we covered 1,500 respondents, and main objective of GNS, Justice Needs Surveys, were the legal needs of population within 3 rayons, then a level of access to justice, including legal services, legal awareness of the population, and the level of public satisfaction with the quality of legal services. And in terms of how they not imply how the trust for formal and informal justice institutions. So here you can see the pictures from those justice needs survey period. And what kind of findings? First of all, we have that 240 households have encountered legal problems in the past 3 years. And among them, mostly women faced with the legal problems. They should to involve, or they are solving by women. And another one, it's a very high confidence to informal institutions. For example, we have like religion leaders, imams, or we have, for example, IACA courts. It's our traditional courts. It was so high compared to the formal institution. Even in Nokat Rayon, 78% showed that confidence to imam was so high. 28% they don't know where to go, and only 8% of respondents use official source. And 32% show that they get information through unofficial internet source like WhatsApp, Telegram, and other sources. And then another one, it was related the most common unresolved legal problems, as our GNS show for us that the main common problem it's related with the social welfare, to receive some social benefits, social pension. And the next one, it was related with the obtaining documents, land issues, family issues, and property issues. For sure, our projects start to focus in order to resolve all such kind of common legal problems and especially justice needs service. So here you can see the main our activities, what we have done and what exactly we are doing currently as well. Actually, we have 4 main components. It's like enhancing collaboration between justice institution and public, and strengthening governance for openness and accountability, promoting judicial independence and self-governance, optimizing justice service for quality and efficiency. So here, all of them related with our 4 components. And currently for the 4th years, we also include the new objectives. It's mostly related with the IACA courts institutions. The main feature of the Kyrgyzstan experience that we created justice groups, especially in our pilot rayons. So within this one, they have to started enhanced interaction between state agencies and communities. For example, these justice groups actually covered, for example, the chairperson of the rayon court, prosecutors. Also, we have internal affair representative here, and local state governments as well, and the main informal activists like public preventive centers representatives, mediators, paralegal, and other activists. So within the justice groups, actually they develop and implementing work plans for the years. All work plans should be directly related with the justice needs issues as well. And here we also identify legal systemic problems on the ground, and develop and implementing mechanism to resolve legal issues. For example, within these local justice groups action plans, we especially our grantee Union of LSG directly worked on land-related matters, because, for example, with land, we have a lot of LSG local specialists who should be responsible for the land issue. And the land issue currently one of the main issue, because we have a transformation, amnesty, and legalization, all of them related with this one also. And currently we created like one-stop shop services, and we created open centers for the legal issues in Nokat and in Tom Rayon as well. For example, if people don't know how to find some information, they can just visit these open centers, and there we have a paralegal, mediators, IACA court representatives, and some other duties who should to responsible to give some advice what exactly to do. So here you can see, for example, within the action plans in courts. We have students who visited within the open days, and they can see how the system worked, especially in the local courts, in terms of how to allocate some cases among the judges and other stuff, even audio video fixation as well. They can see everything and can ask, they have opportunity to ask a question from the chairwomen or staff of the court. And in terms of raising the legal literacy of communities and population, we conducted through our grantees theater of law, because especially through such kind of performance, within the short periods, it's very emotionally deeply impact for the perception, because for the training and for the other activities, we pay a lot of time, but within the short periods, it's for the just outreach campaign, one of the effective. And we conducted a lot of legal Olympiad and video competitions among school children on the human and society, or just human and rights, such kind of contest, training for teachers and social educators on legal topics. Most of those social teachers are paralegals currently. And also we are supporting TV show Akasız Advokat. It's a Kyrgyz teleradio company, and I know there we support free advocate or free lawyers. Within those period, we also integrated some systematic like a justice needs approach as well, because within this we identify what kind of question people asked from lawyers, from which rayon or from which region, they age and other stuff. It's also to help us to adequately react their needs. And we also created and helped to the Ministry of Justice to creating Jardam KG, which means from Kyrgyz to English, it will be like a help KG. It's a new platform, absolutely user-friendly platform, because we also integrated to this platform ChatGPT as well, and any person can find any information related with the legal issues, and a lot of training for paralegals. So you can hear the daily routine of our grantees, mostly working with youth, with the local populations, with digitalization as well. And also we are working on the national level with government partners like court system or justice system, Ministry of Justice. For example, UB helped the judiciary to automate publishing judicial decision for the public and helped the Ministry of Justice, as I mentioned, create Jardam KG portal, where anyone can find step-by-step information on common legal issue in Kyrgyz language. In Kyrgyzstan, unfortunately, we have issue related with the Kyrgyz language, because we have a lot of alternative information in Russian language, but for the population of the rural area, it's a big issue. That's why we mostly focus for the Kyrgyz languages as well. So here you can see how we are optimizing the quality and efficiency of justice and legal service through capacity building. As I mentioned, we have optimizing justice service for quality and efficiency. We, UB supported a lot of trainings on capacity building for the court system, for the prosecutors, for the attorneys, and even for the notariate and other and state guaranteed legal aid registry lawyers as well. So our main achievements for the 2024, it was the first time conducted National Forum on People-Centered Justice. Why we emphasize that it was the big event for us? Because it was the first time when we create such kind of opportunity or platform, when in one side there were representatives from the formal and informal institutions as well. For example, here you can see on the bottom picture the chairperson of the Supreme Court, but at the same time here participated our justice group representatives, members, IACA courts, paralegal, mediators, legal aid services under the Ministry of Justice, and all of them. It was in Jalalabad city, because in Jalalabad city we have a house of justice where in one building located a lot of entities, for example, 7 entities in one building. It's really like a PCG approach in terms of infrastructures, in terms of save of money, save of time, and other stuff. In this event participated 150 participants. And here we also showcased integration formal and informal justice system. As a result, for example, about this event, public outreach reached 201,000 plus people. And especially also, I would like to emphasize about innovative practice and master classes presented in over there. For example, on mediation, demonstration of reaching amicable agreements, explanation, court decision, this was also good. Interviewing a child, technical for court session, probation, the first time demonstration of electronic bracelet uses, IACA court resolution of dispute, execution of court decision, alimony recovery, and payments through the terminal. So, and a lot of stuff over there actually. And currently we also work on the institutionalizing PCG approach through university. Currently we would like to integrate this PCG approach for the current curriculum, and mostly specifically focused for the practical oriented approach through the, for example, moot court, mock trial, analysis of cases, or a lot of such kind of things. And in terms of preparing PCJ models or courses, actually we have key 3 audience. The first one, it's university law students. Another one, it's professional legal communities. Like we have a center for the lawyer, we have a center for the prosecutors, we have, for example, Supreme School of Judges and other, and non-legal community, which includes IACA court members and paralegals as well. And also our main achievement that we integrated feedback from court users. You can see here the QR code, and we also implemented this in our three rayon in Tomnukat and Sverdlovsky. Why these good achievements for us? Because it's this approach. The first of all, it's the right message. Feedback is not directed at the decision of judges, but it's condition, organization, and treat to the people. And the another one, it's accessibility. We don't think only about the physical accessibility. We also think about plain languages, using the plain languages, treat for the people as a human being, in order just to explanation a lot of things, and reacting of response to the justice needs. It is important to show court user that feedback is being responded, especially by the court administration or even by the Supreme Court as well. So, and especially after this feedback mechanism, we just identified the main objectives or outcomes. Actually, it will be increase the trust, especially for the formal institutions, including court system as well. For example, here you can see example of questions here. Yes, for sure, a lot of questions in Russian, but here we just ask about from the perspective of the PCG approach, for example, accessibility of the courts, then how they explain the court decision, for example, using the plain languages, or how they explain about their rights and their obligations. So here we just to identify the fair trails. We received a lot of recommendations and comments from the court users. Why it's very important? Because here we identified for ourselves working directly with the pilot courts and Supreme Courts as well, because we identified for ourselves algorithm for the responding to feedback. For example, first of all, you can see the user feedbacks, and local courts actually will able to handle such kind of issues, and they can decide this one, and then they received some outcomes. But if they cannot, couldn't handle, they can to just to direct to the Supreme Court, and within the Supreme Court authority, they can decide or they can handle, because they they can just to interact with the court department or Supreme School of Justice. But at the end, we have result which can directly react on the user feedback. So currently, in terms of this feedback mechanism, which I highlighted here, that were done, you can see last time the chairperson of Supreme Court actually signed and approved this feedback mechanism, and now we are scaling up, especially this new instrument, because this instrument, as I mentioned before, it's a justice system, it's service providers like court administration or judges, and at the same time we also think about main needs of court users as well. So that's it, and then I would like just to emphasize that within our USAID Hukuk Bulağı project, we really strengthen partnership with the local stakeholders to promote ownership of the justice initiatives, scaling up of the successful models from pilot regions to the national programs, and focus on sustainable improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazira. It was very interesting for all of us. And now I would like to give the floor to Jalaluddin Badalov, who is also our colleague. He is an experienced public educational expert with over 14 years of experience. Currently, he serves as an USAID's judicial system strengthening activity in Uzbekistan. He serves in this program, which is implemented by the East-West Management Institute, UMI. So, Jalaluddin, floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum from Uzbekistan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's an honor, and I'm very pleased to share USAID-funded judicial system strengthening activities in Uzbekistan, how we are advancing legal awareness and transparency with Uzbekistan's justice system. And now I will be sharing the presentation. So, okay, yeah. Our goal at GSSA, we believe that transparency and accessible judiciary is essential for public trust and confidence. To achieve this, we focus on building trust in the legal system by enhancing transparency, accountability, and communication between courts, media, and the public. Empowering citizens with practical legal knowledge so they can confidently understand their rights, navigate the legal system, and advocate for themselves. And fostering the connections between the judiciary, media, and society through open dialogue, mutual understanding, and responsible reporting. And I have to say that Uzbekistan has made remarkable progress in strengthening court-media relations past few years, and one of the significant achievements was the adoption of judicial system information policy for 2023-2026. This policy aims to foster open dialogue between the courts and the public, enhance transparency in the judicial reforms, build public confidence in the judiciary. And I'm pleased that GSSA contributed extensively to this policy, including defining the roles of court press officers and their interaction with media. And this policy officially introduced during the GSSA-led training in Bukhara. It is one of the regions of Uzbekistan, where press officers gained practical tools to implement its mandates effectively. And I have to say that to ensure the transparency and accountability, the work should be done with all components, and we paid attention for media literacy workshops for judges and organized a series of workshops for newly appointed judges aimed at enabling judges to better promote their image and reputation of judicial bodies and manage any crisis situations that might arise, helping them improve their communication skills with the press. And one of active participants from our workshops was Judge Sarvar Mamadiev, who was just appointed in Tashkent court on criminal cases. And he applied his training to conduct high-profile interviews with leading outlets like Q-News, Gazeta.uz, which has millions of followers in Uzbekistan. His engaging approach transformed public perceptions of court accessibility. And I have to say that one of his interview on Q-News reached over 100,000 views and meaningful discussion on transparency in the judiciary. And talking about the trainings for court press officers, these sessions actually equipped press officers with tools to present even the most complex legal data in clear, relatable ways. Participants shared their daily challenges and collaborated on innovative solutions, creating supportive network across regions. These trainings also press officers gained tools like how to develop media strategy, how to deal with crisis communication and gender sensitive reporting. And we also included how to use the AI and social media tools in these trainings. And I have to say that one of our active participants from Andijan, press officer, officer from Andijan court, he actually used AI-powered visualization tools introducing during the training to create an infographic explaining labor rights and this infographic was actually shared widely on social media and became go-to resource for local workers seeking clarity on their rights. Next, and you can see in these photos actually our trainings for journalists. Within 2 years, we have managed to train over 150 journalists and bloggers on fact-checking, ethical reporting, judicial coverage. And what is important during these trainings, we have also invited judges. So it was like more discussion platform, and each side can share their visions on covering court cases and court proceedings. And I have to say that one of the important things in these trainings, we invited not only traditional journalists as we know them, but also bloggers and influencers, so-called influencers. We should deal with them because, for example, in Fergana region, when we had this training, there was a blogger with over 1.5 million followers. And this is crazy numbers actually, because if you watch the content, which is he actually posts on his YouTube channel, Instagram, and other social networks, but he has people just follow him, and we invited this kind of bloggers to our trainings also. And this blogger actually he shared, he started after the training, started sharing on his social media different kind of real life court cases, which I think helped to raise awareness about domestic violence, women's rights. And this is one of the things I have to note. And we also helped to organize a different kind of competitions for journalists and bloggers who had different kind of stories that highlighted the human side of judicial reforms. And about talking about our work with civil society organizations, I have to say that we actively worked with Street Law Incorporation, and we hosted legal life skills training for civil society leaders and activists from all over the Uzbekistan. And these sessions focused on essential legal literacy and facilitation skills, equipping participants to serve as advocates and educators in their local areas. What is important, during these sessions, over 60 activists and civil society leaders have been trained as community leaders, covering such topics as citizens' roles and responsibilities, marriage and divorce, domestic violence, disability rights, labor contract provisions, and the rights and responsibilities related to property ownership and housing. These trainers who gained the knowledge during these legal life skills trainings conducted 31 follow-on sessions on different topics, reaching 917 individuals. And it's just until the September of this year. And one of a groundbreaking initiative of GSSA was to bring judges and civil society representatives together to deliver joint trainings on gender equality, on gender-based violence. These sessions actually helped for developing innovative approaches to protect victims' rights and addressing sensitive issues. And I want to mention in this case a judge from Andijan, It's one of the eastern part of Uzbekistan. Judge Nargiza, she actively cooperated with Mikharjan NGO leaders, and they developed a joint approach for handling gender-based violence cases. And their initiative framework was later shared nationally, helping other judges adopt more sensitive practices. And gender equality has become a key focus in Uzbekistan in the last few years, and GSSA supported appointment of 29 gender officers as gender officers in regional courts, and developed training programs and equipped over 115 judges to handle gender sensitive cases. And in this case, I have to say that one of the gender officers, our very good friend, Judge Nadira Hakimova from the Supreme Court of Uzbekistan, she led workshops on international and national instruments of on a leadership role, and she also co-edited the book Questions and Answers on Gender Equality and Gender-Based Violence, which GSSA supported. Here you can see the photos of judges with civil society organization representatives. So, and another thing of GSSA I have to highlight, it was creating user-friendly visuals, including videos, infographics, and flyers. These tools just simplify complex legal information, making it accessible to citizens. And one video, short video on 3D graphic video that we developed on how to use electronic court cabinet with its interactive court services was viewed over 50,000. It reached 50,000 views on social media. Thank you. I will be ready to answer to your questions after a short video. Now I will be sharing short videos. Thank you.
Bugungi seminar treningimiz biz zo'ravonlikka qarshimiz, jismoniy zo'ravonlikka majburlash.
Jinsiy zo'ravonlik
sabab inson o'zini hayoti pastligi.
Ko'pincha afsuski ayol qizlarimiz qurbon bo'lib qolishi uchun
biz zo'ravonlikka aqlan va jismonan qarshimiz.
Iqtisodiy zo'ravonlikda mol-mulkni tortib olish.
Demak, sizlar iqtisodiy zo'ravonlikka qarshilar.
Ijtimoiy zo'ravonlik o'quv joylarida, ish joylarida bo'ladi. Kiber zo'ravonlik bu asosan ijtimoiy tarmoqlar orqali amalga oshirilmoqda.
O'zbekiston Respublikasida gender tengligi qonuni qabul qilingan. Bir ayol zo'ravonlikka uchrayapti, ichki ishlar ayolga himoya orderi berishi kerak bo'ladi. Albatta, huquqiy hayot ko'nikmalari seminar treningida qatnashib, bilim ko'nikmalari olganimdan keyin Farg'ona viloyatida buni albatta amalga oshirib qo'lladim. Mahalla faollari, ya'ni o'sha xotin-qizlar faollari va yoshlar, institut, universitet, oliy ta'lim muassasalarining yoshlari, hududdagi uyushmagan yoshlarga va ijtimoiy himoyaga muhtoj xotin-qizlarga, nogironligi bor fuqarolarga mana shu metodikalardan foydalanib, ularni xabardorligini oshirdik. Metodikalar yangilik bo'ldi va ularni qo'llash jarayonida, misol uchun aholi bilan ishlashda aholini o'zini tilida gaplasha olish ko'nikmasiga ega bo'ldik. Mana shu seminar treninglarni olib borganimizda shahar tumanlarda biz 60 nafar mahalla raislari, mahalla faollariga seminar trening o'tib, ularni xabardorligini oshirdik. 150 nafarga yaqin ishchi xodimlarni mehnat huquqlari bo'yicha xabardorligini oshirdik va 300 nafarga yaqin ayol qizlar yoshlarni huquqiy savodxonligini oshirish va ularni xabardorligini oshirish bo'yicha bir qator ma'lumotlar berishga erishdik va buni qatoriga yoshlarimiz kirib ketadi. Yoshlarimiz ham 350-400 nafar yoshlarni qamrab oldik.
Aynan bizni tashkilotimizga turli muammolar bo'yicha kelishadi. U psixologik, u yuridik, bir ijtimoiy muammo bo'lsin. Har bir kelgan mijoz demak bir paytning o'zida ham yuristga, ham psixologga, ham ijtimoiy xodimga murojaati bo'ladi-da. Yaqinda mana o'sha o'quvlardan keyin bitta murojaatchimiz keldi. Joyda haqiqatdan ishlayotgan tashkilotida mehnat huquqlari buzilgan va bizda o'qigan mana bu o'quvlarimiz biz uchun juda ham samarali, foydali bo'ldi. Bu ish chiroyli, muvaffaqiyatli yakun topdi. Shu foyda bo'ldi, samara bo'ldi. O'sha hududlarda, joylarda aholi qatlamida ishlayotgan paytda, ayniqsa shu advocacy bo'yicha o'qigan darslarimizda u yerda qo'llanilgan metodlarda biz aholi bilan ishlash jarayonida muammolarni olib chiqishda, aynan mana shu zo'ravonlikka uchragan ayollar bilan ko'proq ishlayman o'zim. Aynan o'shalar bilan ishlash jarayonida yoki bo'lmasam umuman aholini bugun qanaqa bir qiynoq, muammolar bo'layotgan bo'lsa, shu muammolar hal qilishda aynan advocacy bo'yicha o'qigan darslarimiz biz uchun juda ham samarali bo'ldi.
Murojaat qilishimning sababi o'ta tushkunlik holatda edim. Oilaviy muammolar, ikkala oilamda, o'zimni oilamda, turmush qurgan oilamda muammolar bor edi. Har tomonlama stresslar sabab murojaat qilganman. Foydasini bildim, o'zligimni tanidim. Hamma fikr-xayolim negativ bo'lib qolgan edi. Hozir mana Xudoga shukr o'zgardim. O'zimni yaxshi ko'rishni boshladim. Hayotga qiziqishim oshdi.
Thank you, Mariam.
Thank you, Jalaluddin. It was very interesting. And now I would like to introduce our colleague as well, Brittany Davis from Center for Justice Innovation, who is our partner organization from USA. And Ms. Davis provides training and technical assistance to communities across the country that seek to enhance their response to gender-based violence. This work involves collaborating with both community-based and system entities to problem solve and support various initiatives important within those communities. So Brittany, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to join you all. And I feel like this is a wonderful transition because the presentation we just heard about focused a little bit on gender-based violence, which is going to be what I'm going to be focusing on today. So just give me 1 second to share my screen and get this right. Can you see the slides okay? Mariam, can you see the slides okay? Okay, perfect, great. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about a specific issue of addressing gender-based violence and a model that we use in the United States. And so before we do that, I want to share a little bit of information about my organization. I work for the Center for Justice Innovation, which is based in New York City. We're a community justice organization that centers safety and racial justice in partnership with communities, courts, and the people most impacted. So even our mission statement right there is very aligned with the concepts of people-centered practice as we're talking about today. And we do our work with 3 different buckets of work. We have operating programs, which is our direct service, where we are on the front lines working in court systems and in communities to advance justice and kind of what justice means for those folks. We have research teams who do field leading research related to community justice and criminal justice reform. And then we have expert assistance teams, which is what team I'm on, where we take the lessons learned from our direct service workers and from our researchers to share with folks who are interested in enhancing their responses across the country as well. I work specifically on our gender and family justice team, and our mission is to help courts and communities respond creatively, holistically, and effectively to domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and dating violence. And we're a very values-based organization and values-based team. And we did some work over the past few years to come up with a value statement that we always like to start our presentations off with, just to have folks understand how we're aligned and how we approach this work. So the Gender and Family Justice team is committed to actively promoting equitable, open, and intentional spaces within our team and within greater community discussions. In order to facilitate collaborative conversations that center well-being and self-reflection, we expect respectful conduct towards each other, our staff, and our guests, conduct that strives to be anti-racist and inclusive of marginalized individuals. We acknowledge that we work within systems that uphold institutional inequity and are committed to listening to and amplifying the voices and perspectives of institutionally harmed communities in our work. So as we're switching gears and focusing really on gender-based violence here, I know in the video there was a little brief definition of that, but wanted to provide a definition that our colleagues over at the New York City Mayor's Office to End Domestic and Gender-Based Violence have come up with related to gender-based violence. And so it's any violence that stems from unequal power relationships between genders. It's rooted in gender norms and societal expectations about roles, as well as broader power imbalances, and it can impact people of all different genders. And there are a few specific forms that are highlighted on this slide: intimate partner and family violence, elder abuse, sexual violence, stalking, and human trafficking. My team does a lot of work focusing on intimate partner violence, and this is our definition that we use in our trainings. So a form of gender-based violence and carried out by a romantic or dating partner where one individual seeks to really exert power and control over the other through abuse. And we like to distinguish that IPV is not only or not limited to physical violence, and it can involve emotional, psychological, sexual, financial manipulation and control as well. Just to give a brief snapshot of the prevalence of IPV in the United States, statistics can be a real challenge, due to varying definitions of intimate partner violence in different states across the country. There's often sometimes a focus on physical violence or single incident violence and lots of underreporting, but just wanted to give you a glimpse of some information. This is from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I believe that the data is from this year. So they're connected to all of the domestic violence hotlines across the country. So they're getting 20,000 calls to domestic violence hotlines a day. About 10 million people abused by intimate partner annually. And unfortunately, there have been 580 gun-related domestic violence fatalities this year. So you can see that domestic violence, intimate partner violence continues to be a significant issue in the United States. And what I'm going to talk about here is how we can create a coordinated community responses to approach that particular work. So we did some work nationally through some funding from the Office on Violence Against Women to support some communities across the country in either starting up or enhancing this model of coordinated community response. And in doing so, we came up with our own definition, a new definition. And the idea, a lot of the examples and things that were talked about today are really connected to this definition. So it's bringing together a diverse group of community partners to develop a shared vision to collectively and consistently address the widespread impact of gender-based violence and provide multiple pathways to support healing and accountability for families. So one of the things I always like to point out about this definition is, being connected to a diverse group of community partners, right? So making sure that we have judges and advocates and mental health providers and all of these folks kind of coming together and coalescing around this particular issue. And the other thing I like to point out here is, how do we provide multiple pathways to support healing and accountability for families? As we'll talk about, oftentimes what we've seen in coordinated community responses across the country is that sometimes they are solely focused on a criminal legal response. But we know that in our country, not everyone feels comfortable going to the criminal legal system to get safety and healing for themselves. And so we wanted to think about how do we, partner with community partners to really develop new pathways to provide support, healing, and accountability for families that were more responsive to the needs of community members. So a brief history of CCRs. They started in Duluth, Minnesota, which is one of the states in the Midwest in the United States, as really a grassroots movement led by advocates to identify gaps in the system and community response, and to really create strong protocols and procedures to enhance survivor safety and enhance accountability for those who cause harm. And since then, we've really seen CCRs proliferate. There's been so many that have been developed across the country and even across the world. And we always like to point out, too, that our funder, the Office on Violence Against Women, likes to fund organizations and communities who are doing their work in coordination and in collaboration. Some of the goals of CCRs are listed here. Again, wanting to ensure survivor-centered responses to violence. So what do survivors in your communities want to see, and how can we make sure that we're providing resources that can actually meet their needs? Addressing those community harms caused by domestic violence, and really just promoting this notion that domestic violence is a community problem that requires community intervention. We want to also make sure that we're supporting accountability for those who are causing harm through gender-based violence, and ensuring are culturally responsive, community-centered, and accessible. And of course, always thinking about system accountability and sustainability as well. According to the UN Women, there are a lot of different benefits of the coordinated community response model. The primary benefit, of course, is victim safety, but as you'll see on this slide, there are a variety of different other benefits as well. I think of, and I'm sure this is the case in your communities as well, resources, either human resources or financial resources, are often limited, but CCRs, when you're working in coordination, can help to avoid duplication of services and really make sure that each agency is leveraging their strengths so that they can better meet the needs of your community. Also think about, just the idea of having linked trainings to enhance interdisciplinary coordination. So if you have regular joint trainings with law enforcement and healthcare providers, and folks really get a better understanding of what each entity does and what that particular role is, that can really help make sure they understand each other's role, understand each other's perspectives, and can better partner because they know what each agency is supposed to be doing. So on my slide before, I think when I gave the definition of CCRs, there was a beautiful picture of a garden. And so my colleague at my office came up with this really great analogy of coordinated community responses as a garden through which all of our work to address gender-based violence can really grow and thrive. So we'll talk a little bit and use that analogy about how do we grow a CCR as we move through this presentation. And for us, it's really important to start with the soil. We know that really important things and wonderful things can happen with our soil is healthy. And as I mentioned before, we're a very values-based organization and values-based team. And so when we were doing this work with grantees and sites across the country, we came up with a list of guiding values or principles that basically can help to fertilize that soil. And so they're listed on this screen here. And so I think of the phrase, you reap what you sow, and how the values and the principles, again, they're like the fertilizer, the mulch, and the compost that we put into the soil. And we won't dive deeply into them right now necessarily, but I'll list them off, and what we'll do is we'll share, as I move through the presentation, ways that we've operationalized these guiding principles so you can kind of understand what it looks like in practice. But for us, when we're thinking about this, and I think a lot of these principles tie directly to people-centered practice as we've been talking about today, but centering the voices of people with lived experience, reflecting diversity and upholding an intersectional lens, ensuring flexible responses, promoting holistic accountability, advancing community-driven responses, and assuring sustainability. So I'll move through this just a little bit more quickly. I know we're short on time, but when we're doing our work nationally, there are a lot of other types of collaborations that communities might already have that are wonderful, coordinated, collaborative efforts, such as having high-risk teams where folks are really zeroing in on the most high-risk and most lethal cases in their community to make sure that they're providing more supports for the litigants in those particular cases, or developing family justice centers, those one-stop shops for survivors to go and access legal and advocacy resources and kind of all of their needs in one place where there's centralized intake so they don't have to tell their story over and over again. So these are wonderful, wonderful collaborations that can exist in a community, but we see them as different than CCRs. So we see these as individual plants that are in the garden of the CCR. And really the difference that we see here is that the coordinated community response is that more macro response. So it's addressing all types of violence. It's allowing for ongoing monitoring of the system, identifying and enhancing community resources, as opposed to some of these other smaller types of collaboration might be more case specific, might only be focusing on a particular type of case. The CCR is focusing on all of the different cases and monitoring both the system response and the community response. So as we move through this, I've loved listening to the presentations of all of the ways that you have partnered with other community entities through your work in your different countries and in developing coordinated community responses. That is so important too. We have 2 slides here of different entities that can be included in a coordinated community response. I often like to talk about faith-based organizations and faith leaders and how crucial of a role they can play in coordinated community responses. We know that some folks might feel more comfortable going to their faith leader and talking about an issue that's going on in their relationship and getting support there. So how can you make sure that faith leaders and faith-based organizations are connected to this larger coordinated group who's focusing on addressing gender-based violence, so they can share their perspectives on how to create more culturally specific approaches that are going to better meet the needs of those who might be in their congregations. I do a lot of work related to abusive partner intervention programs or battering intervention programs, the programs that work with those who have caused harm through intimate partner violence or the perpetrators. And it's important for them to be included in these conversations as well, because if you want to end violence, you've got to do the work with those who are causing harm. So they're more attuned to their particular needs and the barriers to their accountability. So having them involved in those conversations can be so important. On this slide, we have some other suggestions as well. Our office did a study a few years ago now, trying to understand the extent to which judicial engagement occurs within CCRs. And I think we surveyed about 46 CCRs and 10 considered the judge the leader of their coordinated community response. And of those respondents, over half of them indicated that court engagement is actually very important for the CCR. So really just considering that court actors can be an important component of this, and expressing judicial leadership and bringing together folks can be so important as well. These are some of the best practices that we have seen over the years in developing these coordinated community responses. So again, having that shared vision and values when you're bringing together folks who have different profession types, they might have different ethical codes, different ways of doing things, right? I'm a social worker, there are lawyers on my team, and sometimes I don't always understand the way that they operate, right? Because I have a different lens. So it can be really important to have that shared vision and those shared values and goals that you're all working on. So that you're always working towards the same thing. So when there are disagreements, because there will always be disagreements, right? You can go back to that shared vision and shared values and be able to move through that. We often talk about training opportunities too, and I think there were so many wonderful trainings that you all have been put on in your communities. And I think of training opportunities not just for the stakeholders, right, who are involved in the coordinated community response, but again, how are we putting community back into coordinated community response? So how and in what ways can we provide training opportunities for the broader community to learn about what domestic violence is, to learn about the ways in which they can, provide support to family members, friends who might be experiencing domestic violence, so that they're all aware of places that they can refer and take people if they're wanting to get the help that they need. So just a few of the ways in which we see these best practices for coordinated community responses. So I want to go back to the values that we talked about in the beginning. And these are the values that we came up with to really encourage communities to think about how they can be more holistic in their coordinated community responses. And I think a lot of these really speak to the people-centered practice and people-centered justice that we've been talking about. So when we talk about centering the voices of people with lived experience in our CCRs, that means including survivors and members as leaders, right? Having focus groups and surveys for those community members to get, more information, right? We don't want to just have one person that we always go to and they're the be all end all of input from survivors, right? We want to make sure that we are having broad input from folks in the community who have experience, who have gone through the justice system, who may have feedback to offer about the justice system and how to improve it. We also think about wanting to reflect diversity and upholding an intersectional lens. So one thing that we often talk about is making sure that the membership of the CCRs reflects the diversity of the community, right? We don't want folks who, traditionally have power and privilege and they continue to have that and they're the only ones in the CCR. We want to make sure that we're getting diversity of input and opinions as we're moving through and making changes to the system and to communities. Ensuring flexible responses. So again, going to community members and having them tell you and talk to you about resource gaps and what they need to ensure safety and accountability in their lives, even if it doesn't exist, right? So it's great and important to get that feedback. And then what can you do with that feedback to try to create new programming or new resources to better meet their needs? Promoting holistic accountability, again, hearing from people who cause harm through intimate partner violence about the services that would support their accountability and change, and also the barriers, right? There are sometimes barriers to safety for survivors that the system is creating, right? And barriers to accountability for those who are causing harm. So how can we break down those barriers and address their particular needs? Advancing community-driven responses. I talked a little bit about one of the ways we've operationalized that by, again, providing those educational opportunities for community members. And then assuring sustainability is so crucial and so key for the coordinated community responses. It can be really hard to bring together groups of people who have different, deadlines and different protocols that they're following. So it can be really helpful to have shared policies, MOU agreements, protocols, leadership transitions are discussed because we know folks go on to do different things, right? You want to make sure that you're prepared for those transitions. So we see, this work as really requiring lots of planning and active cultivation of relationships and partnerships. Each part of the garden might need different things, might have different strengths and needs. So we really see this as an important component of being able to cultivate those relationships with those folks who are part of the coordinated community responses. So we see coordinated community responses across the country having regular meetings. So sometimes it's a monthly meeting. Sometimes we've seen folks have quarterly meetings and then develop working groups that are going to tackle specific issues where folks are meeting a little bit more regularly. But all of those connections and ways that you're building rapport with individuals will make it easier to do the work in the long run. And these are some of examples of issues that we've seen addressed by coordinated community responses. So we see in the domestic violence field that folks are moving towards incorporating more of the general risk need responsivity framework. So when you're trying to incorporate a risk assessment, it can be important to have conversations with your broader community and stakeholders about which risk assessment is appropriate and how you might be able to share that risk information. So our team has a DV Risk Center where we work with communities who are trying to incorporate risk assessments into their work. And one of the things that they always do is, we might get someone from law enforcement come in saying that they want to use a risk assessment. And we often say, all right, let's go back to the community and bring in your other partners and talk about this. Let's talk about what's going to be the most beneficial. We've seen CCRs and Duluth, the first CCR did a great job of creating policies for identifying predominant aggressor and those using resistive violence so that there might be different approaches to those within the system. I worked with a CCR over the past few years in Virginia, and they were trying to figure out how to create more community-based approaches for working with people who have caused harm through intimate partner violence. So again, the perpetrators of violence. So worked, for a few years in a working group to develop a proposal for what that might look like. Also development of a targeted collaboration. So folks might want to create one of those individual plants or one of those family justice centers, for example, to really provide a one-stop shop for survivors. And so the collaboration can help to create those entities. And then we've also worked with communities across the country who have created standards for programs and use their CCRs for buy-in and feedback on that particular thing. So lots of things can be addressed and tackled within coordinated community responses. And the goal, to close out our garden analogy, is that during the time of harvest, we can enjoy the bounty and the garden and these vegetables here that are beautiful and their color and their diversity and really reflect the ability for folks to create thriving communities, thriving survivors, thriving children, and in their communities through that coordination. So that is all I have for you. I have our website here if you want to learn any more information. We do a lot of other work related to domestic violence courts and engaging those who cause harm. So our website is dvcourts.org. And here is my contact information. And I think I got us back on time.
Thank you, Brittany. And now I would like to thank you, everyone, because we are done with our presentations and we will move soon to our discussion session. Firstly, I would like to say that I'm sure that the session was very useful for all the attendees. And as for me as a PCJ practitioner, I would like to add that the shared information will be crucial for us as well, as we are also learning by doing. As you all know, there is no specific or singular way to implement PCJ activities or do PCJ programming. So it's not a math formula which we follow. So we are all experimenting together with this relatively new concept for one common goal, which is achieving fair and accessible justice systems in our countries. Therefore, I would like, first of all, to wish you, all of us, great success in this valuable work. And about discussion, I would like now to give you the opportunity to respond to the questions asked by attendees. Unfortunately, we won't be able to address all of them, but I will direct one question to each speaker. Firstly, I would like to ask Tim about our activities in our Georgian judiciary and justice system in general. So people are interested about which of the activities you described, which of the various strategies for mainstreaming PCJ in Georgia, which one do you see as being the most important one and most successful, maybe? Yeah.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you also to all of our speakers. I'm really grateful for the time. It was fantastic hearing everything, and also our interpreter. Let's not forget our interpreters. As for your question, look, I have my own preferences, I guess, but really each of those strategies that I mentioned, starting from cross-institutional interaction to getting the data and understanding what the needs are, through to thinking about the ways in which you can act on this data to improve people-centered justice, to actually implementing those projects. All four stages are indispensable, if you're asking me. But I personally, as a practitioner, as someone who likes to see ideas being implemented or being taken on board rather by institutions, I really prefer this idea of PCJ thinking, getting the capacity for the institutions and various other players. I'm not talking about formal institutions, but also informal institutions, small community organizations, community boards, and non-governmental organizations. I'd like them to build the capacity to promote PCJ thinking, and that alone will not change the outcome. But for me, it's as a person who's been doing this for a while, that has been one of the key, or I guess the most favorite strategy, but not obviously the only one or the most important one.
Thank you, Tim. It was interesting. So now I would like to ask Nazira about their work. So the question reads as follows: how did the Justice Needs Survey help identify the main challenges to accessing justice, and how is this data being used to remove these barriers in your work?
Thank you, Mariam, for your question. Can you hear me?
Yes, Nazira, we can.
Yeah. Thank you. Just I will turn off. First of all, this justice needs survey findings, it's let us just to identify next step, what exactly to do and how to react in terms of legal needs of population, especially in our pilot rayons. As I said, first of all, we identified such kind of common legal issues. And for example, our grantees also focus their activities, especially in order to resolve these legal issues. For example, land issue, social benefits issue. And another question, it was related, another finding was related about the low legal literacy of population. On this way, we also started to work with through our grantees or sometimes directly with our beneficiaries, with paralegals, because before this time, we have never paid attention for the paralegal institution, but it's really great institution in order to intercommunicate through paralegals, especially in the rural area. And at the same time, we started to mostly focus for the legal service providers. They should be, first of all, as a PCJ sensitivity. I can say this word because, first of all, we pay attention for the verbal and non-verbal communication with the justice seekers as well. So what else? So, you know, such kind of finding, it's really identify very clearly what to do next. And I'm sure that we have a lot of achievements because of this genese. That's it.
Thank you, Nazira.
Welcome.
Now I would like to ask Jalaluddin the question, which was asked by our attendee. What innovative approaches can we adopt to ensure legal education activities effectively reach and resonate with underserved communities?
Okay, I think that we are actually now working on this kind of innovative approach. We are now developing a mobile app, which will include all interactive court services. And I hope that it will be ready on December, at the end of December, that we can test it. And there will be all courts, 4 types of courts in Uzbekistan, and people can just apply, claim to court through this app and monitor their case. And I think this is one of the direction, and let us see this next year, how it will be working.
Thank you. As I said, the last question will be addressed to Brittany. As our attendee says, our focus today has been on people-centered justice. How do you see coordinated community responses as related to that? And how do you ensure that the voices of those with lived experience are heard in the creation and implementation of CCR?
Awesome. Thank you so much for the question. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I think as I was moving through the presentation, I hope that you were able to see just the connections between all of the different presentations and the kind of strategies that folks were using to uplift, making sure that we're centering people's voices. So I think that people-centered justice is directly related to CCRs because PCJ is really about putting people and people with lived experience at the center of the design of interventions and treating folks with dignity and respect while prioritizing their needs and preserving, their well-being. As I mentioned, one of the values that we've developed for our coordinated community responses is about centering the voices of those with lived experience and including them in that decision-making. We know that they're, at the end of the day, the folks who are going to be most impacted by the decisions that are made by those coordinated community responses, and they have a better understanding, even if they've moved through their situation, they have a better understanding of what their needs are and what the needs of similarly situated folks might be. So really crucial to invite them into those conversations through participating as members on coordinated community responses, by participating in or creating surveys and focus groups. Lots of you talked about those strategies so that you're making sure that you're getting those perspectives. And again, I think also broadening our responses and not only thinking about justice within the court systems, but community justice more broadly too. What are the things in the that they're saying that they need, and how can we collectively work together as a community, as a coordinated community to meet those needs? I think PCJ is often also about choice, right? And being able to provide multiple opportunities and options for folks. And so listening to folks when we invite them into those conversations and have them in leadership roles, and then really working to address those particular needs as a community.
Thank you again. Does anyone want to add anything? Maybe Pamela, Andrew, Mark?
No, I don't have anything to add. I am just in awe of what is going on in your countries. It is fabulous. I think even we in the United States can learn from what you are doing in your regions. So I would just like to express my heartfelt gratitude for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I'll just add a further thanks to everybody for participating and for making those presentations, and for those who are especially in Central Asia working so late tonight. Appreciate that. Just one comment that was interesting for me was to see an emphasis on youth. And if you think about how people-centered justice is all about changing the way we think about justice, it's so important to keep the youth involved and to figure out what they're thinking, what they're hoping for, and what they want to be working towards. But so I thought that was really interesting to hear all the work that's with the youth. And thanks again to everybody.
Thank you.
I would just say putting people-centered justice into practice is not easy. And while there is some continuity from our traditional approaches or what we've been doing around the world in some areas, there is something new to this, I believe. And so you're the ones that are doing it and sharing what you're doing, how you're doing, and what you're learning is key. And again, I just want to say thanks to the organizers, UMI and IACA, for facilitating this sharing. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. So goodbye, everyone. Thanks again. Thank all the presenters, all of you, and also interpreters, as Tim mentioned. And hopefully we will meet again soon. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.